Everybody, we are back. And although this is a little bit late of a video, it is Genesis chapter 16. Okay. And I want a little update for the Anchor in the Storm people that, first of all of the live videos on Facebook have been deleted, thanks to Facebook. So I will be trying to upload them again as best as I can over the course of this next month. So basically, where we are in Genesis is that God has now made a covenant with Abram because Abram has no child, and God has made a covenant. Okay, I'm going to give you a child, and so He makes this covenant, and He cuts. He has Abram sacrifice and kill a heifer, which would be a cow, and as well as, if I'm not mistaken, a female goat and a male goat, and cut those in half, and then also uh, kill a turtle dove and one other bird, a pigeon, I think. But those he did not cut in half, and God passed through that, and so now we have a covenant. Okay, so that's where we pick up at, is that there's this covenant going on. So we have, and Sarai, that would be Sarah, right? The wife of Abram, not had born a child. So even though there was this promise, Sarah's basically gone, okay, hey, I have not become pregnant yet. So what's going on, God? Why are you taking so long? Kind of thing. So that's what's taking place. And Sarai is going, okay, hey, I haven't born you a child. I have not become pregnant. What's going on? Why is God not keeping his promise? Because she's viewing the situation in her own time frame. God should have me bear a child, but it should happen when I want it to. And that's what a lot of us do. We basically go to God and we go, hey, God, I want this. Oh, but by the way, God, I want it on my time frame. And she had a maidservant. So she had a servant. This would have been most likely maidservants back then. This would have either been most likely someone who was in the household of Abram, who was a servant and was basically given to Sarai as, you're a servant. So, as we know with married couples, what's mine is yours, kind of thing. And so Sarai has the maidservant go in and basically lay with Abraham to get pregnant. Because she's like, if God's not going to give me what I want on my time frame, then I'm going to do it on my own. Now, I don't think this is necessarily uh, the idea of her going, okay, I have to make God do it on my time frame, or that she's like being completely disobedient. But this is more of like, she doesn't really understand how God's going to give a child. Now remember, Sarah is up in age. She's at least 50, 60 years old, maybe a little older than that. So she's sitting there and she's like, okay, how is God supposed to be doing this? You know, I've been waiting. I haven't become pregnant. I don't know what's going on. So maybe part of the plan includes my maidservant. So as we humans tend to do, we tend to come up with our own plan of how God is supposed to fulfill some sort of promise or word or thing that he's basically desiring to do. And so we end up coming up with our own plan, and we don't realize that's not God's plan. So instead of waiting on the Lord like we should, we don't, and we go, okay, you know what? I'm just going to kind of assume that this plan that I come up with is God's plan, and it doesn't work out the way we expect it to. So that's what's going on here. Is Sarai is like, okay, if I can't get pregnant, then I'm going to make sure that this fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham occurs, even if it has to happen through adultery. And therein lies the problem. Okay. And so she has a maidservant, which is an Egyptianess. So it's an Egyptian maidservant. And the name of the maidservant was Hagar. Okay. And so she said to Hagar, Sarai to Abraham, see now, me restraint has restrained me. So basically, I have been restrained from having a child. So the way I view that when I read that is that basically I'm assuming that Sarah explains to Hagar, hey, God has promised Abram a child in order to pass along all that he has, all his land and everything. And so she's probably explaining to Hagar, hey, maybe you are part of this process. Not thinking, okay, God is a God of miracles. God does miracles. So instead of trusting God and allowing God to perform the miracles of birth at an old age, she doesn't do that. She instead goes to Hagar and goes, okay, this has to have happened through human means. I got to come up with a plan on how to get this to happen, how to get God's fulfillment to take place. And see, that's, again, part of the problem. Because who's supposed to fulfill God's promise? When God makes a promise, who's supposed to fulfill his promise? Is it supposed to be us? Or is it supposed to be God? If God is the one that's supposed to fulfill his promise to mankind, shouldn't it make sense that God be the one to come up with the plan on how it is to occur and not mankind? We often have problems waiting on the Lord. And even the best of us have problems waiting on the Lord at times. Now, granted, the closer you are to the Lord, the easier it is to trust him. But what my point is that it doesn't matter who you are or how strong in the faith you are. At some point, God is going to say something to you and you're going to be like, well, I trust you, but that's kind of difficult. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound like it's really human to take place. Almost like we limit God in a way. We go, God, you can do this, you can do that. Now, we see that a lot, actually. Good examples of that is Muslims. Muslims go, okay, well, God can't be born, otherwise he's not God. So they say that. Not thinking that, okay, you're limiting God. Why can't God make himself born? Isn't he all powerful? Anyway, so let's continue with reading. So Sarah is explaining, Yahweh has restrained me, right there. Yahweh Asarani. Yahweh Asarani. God has restrained me. Yahweh, that's the God of the Old Testament. Yahweh has restrained me from bearing children. So she's already counting out God. She's already going, okay, God made a promise, but apparently God can't fulfill his promise. Therein lies one of the problems. Doubt. What does the enemy love to do? The enemy loves to make mankind doubt. The enemy loves to try to make mankind go, okay, what's going on? God's not good enough. God can't do it. So, that's what the enemy loves to do. He loves to get mankind to doubt. And it doesn't matter how that happens. The enemy loves to make us doubt God. God has forbidden me, restrained me from bearing a child. Go in, please, to my maidservant. So basically, go have intercourse with my maidservant. She tells that to her husband. Go have sex with somebody else, basically. Okay? go have intercourse with somebody else. Adultery, right? Now, you would think that Sarai, being a Jew, would know what Scripture has to say about adultery. That it's never a good thing. It's never, and God never fulfills any of his solutions for people's lives by going around and going, okay, hey, yeah, no problem. Go do sin in order to fulfill my promise. He never does that. He will never do that. I've seen people numerous times in life go, okay, well, God must have brought this situation to me, even though it's sinful because it fulfills something. Like a good example is there's lots of women in the world, and they go, okay, well, God brought me this ability to be a prostitute, or God brought me this ability to sell my body online for sexual pleasure, and that's how God's going to supplement my income. That's how I need to trust God and believe in God. And I'm like, that's not God you're listening to. That's the devil, because God doesn't do that. He doesn't open the doors to sinful things, in order to fulfill what he wants to do in your life. God is not a God who sins. Okay? So the very fact that Sarah is thinking, okay, go into somebody else who is not your wife and have sex with that person, and that's how God's going to fulfill the promise, is hilarious. It's hilarious and it's nonsense. Okay? But anyways, she says, go in to my maidservant. I shall obtain children. Okay, now obviously this does not mean I'm going to get pregnant when, like, some sort of miraculous, all of a sudden Sarah is pregnant, even though Abraham has intercourse with Hagar. No. This is like, you're in my household, therefore any children of you is children of me, kind of thing. So kind of like extension, like adopted family kind of thing. I shall obtain children of our household, in other words. So the ideal here would be, I can't have kids, so let me go have somebody else get pregnant of my husband. And because I'm married to my husband, that child is now part of me, in a way. So kind of the same thing as we do today in the world, where we go, okay, if my wife can't have kids, then let me go have a surrogate. In the world today, we have that, which is basically, if for whatever reason your lover cannot have kids, especially if it's a woman, what they will do is they will take an egg from the woman, and they will take a sperm from the man, and they will go and mix in a laboratory. They will put the egg and the sperm together to have it become a baby, and then will put this fertilized egg into somebody else. Okay, so that's basically the same principle as what she's trying to do, the only in a nutshell. And she says, I shall obtain children by her, that would be Hagar, and he did Abraham. So Abraham consented. Now, that's Abraham's mistake. He should not have, sure, I'll go ahead and do this. But because he was a fallen man, capable of sinning, he goes, okay, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and do what my wife says. So he heeded the voice of his spouse Sarai and took Sarai, wife. But that's not mean he took Sarai. That means basically he took Hagar. He took the advice or the words of his wife, and he went and actually laid with Hagar. And Hagar did indeed become pregnant, as we will see. Okay. So he listens to the voice of his wife, Sarai, and Abraham, went into Hagar, the Egyptianess, her maidservant, after 10 years had dwelt Abraham in the land of Canaan. So how long would, so you remember in previous chapters, Abraham and Lot separate, right? Because they have issues with their servants, having quarrels with one another. So they go separate ways. So it's basically saying at 10 years from that time until now has passed. Okay, 10 years that Abraham has dwelt in the land of Canaan. Okay, so that's a specific land in the Jewish area. And she gave her Abraham. So basically, Sarai gave to Abraham, or Abram at this point, gave to Abraham Hagar, okay, to have sex, to have intercourse. Okay. So I'm giving these people, I'm giving my maidservant Hagar to Abraham. Okay. And even though they were married, hey, let me give this to this person. Doesn't make much sense. But anyway, she gave, and so he went in. That means he actually did have sex with her. Okay. And he went into Hagar. So he had intercourse with Hagar, unprotected intercourse. Because back then, they didn't have condoms. They don't use condoms. Okay. Back then, their only means of regulating childbirth back then was to pull out. Okay. That was their only means to do anything, was to pull out. Okay. And so he went into Hagar, and Hagar, conceived, had a child. See if it won't tell me what the word is, but Vatahar. Vatahar. Okay. So W will often sound like, the W will often sound like V. Vatahar. Vatare. And when she saw that she had conceived, so when Hagar saw that she had conceived, then became despised. But this is not when Hagar saw that she was conceived. This is when she saw that she had conceived. So this would be, in the story, this would be when Sarai saw that Hagar had conceived a child. Okay. Now you would think, as a human being, you would think for a split second that, hey, why would I get despised when I'm the one that came up with the plan to give my husband to this woman? That's foolishness. In all aspects, that is foolishness. That's like going, you know what? Hey, that's like telling your child, hey, go eat this chocolate cake. But then you get mad at your kid for eating the chocolate cake. And you're like, hello, you're the parent. You gave him the chocolate cake. So it's the thing. It's like, hello, Sarah, or Sarai. What did you think was going to happen? You told your husband to go have sex with. He, for whatever reason, out of stupidity, listened. He went in and had sex with Hagar, got her pregnant. You opened that door to her. So why are you feeling despised? Okay? But anyway, Sarai now is like, oh. So she's basically dealing with feelings that she doesn't want to deal with. She's like, I'm now feeling despised. And her mistress in her eyes. So it's like almost kind of like this whole thing going on of the tension between Sarai and Hagar, the looks that occur between Sarai and Hagar. Sarai, who's Sarah basically, is like, okay, well, now Hagar is like being prideful and, oh, I got to get pregnant by your husband, but you can't have a kid, okay, is what's going on. So, Sarai goes to Abraham and says, I did something wrong. Well, yeah, of course, you used adultery to try to fulfill one of God's words. It would make sense, okay? And so she's basically thinking that because I'm getting all these looks from Hagar, that Yahweh, that's God, has judged me. God is judging me, right? Then I became despised. So she's basically telling the whole thing of going on. So she's like, I am wrong. Abraham, I'm wrong. Abram, I'm wrong. Okay, that's what she's doing. She's doing, Abram, I'm wrong. I was wrong for having you go in to my maidservant and get her pregnant. But hey, at this point, it's already too late. Now, yes, they probably could have killed the kid, but, at least I would give it to them that they're not murderers. They're not just going to go, okay, I'm going to kill a kid. Because regardless of how she might feel towards Hagar, this is still Abram's offspring. And that's not something I would imagine anybody would be like, oh yeah, sure, let's go kill the kid just because we don't like the mother. Now, sadly, in the world we live in today, they do that all too often. They go, let me abort the child because I was raped. Now, I'm not saying raping is good, but I'm saying someone raping you, that's no excuse to take it out on an innocent child just because you can't stand the person, what they did to you. So she explains this to Abraham, hey, I was wrong. My wrong. See if I said this right. I think it's Hamasi? Kamasi. Kamasi Chamasi. Something like that. I was wrong. Upon you. So basically, I was wrong to have you go into my maidservant. Into her embrace. Into your embrace. And when she saw that she had conceived, so when it was realized that Hagar had conceived, then I became despised. Looked down on, basically. I'm being looked down on because I don't have a child, and easily enough, Hagar, my maidservant, has become pregnant by you. So she's basically trying to come clean and be like, look, I'm sorry. I thought I had a solution, but I was wrong. And she's telling this to her husband. Okay? And she's saying, because I did wrong, Yahweh, which is their God, has judged me. He has chosen to judge me. Okay, so Yahweh, our God, is judging me between me and you. So God is judging me, basically. So she said to Abraham, to Sarai, indeed, your maidservant in your hand, do to her what is good. So if I'm not misunderstanding this by the word, Abraham says to Sarai, okay, so Abraham's telling Sarai, this is your maidservant. Do to her as you wish. I would think that I would be like, no, this is my offspring, but then again, it's an offspring through sin. So it's not having the same context as an offspring that is brought on by God. Now, I want to emphasize, I'm not talking here about a person's worth being determined by how they are born. Okay, that is not the case. Okay, but what is going on is that Sarai is going to Abram and explaining the situation to Abram, and Abram's like, hey, why are you coming to me? This is your maidservant. She belongs to you. Do what you wish. Okay? Do what is good. Do what is good to her. Now, notice what he says here. He doesn't say, do whatever you want to her. Like, kill her, kill the kid, whatever. He doesn't say that. He says, do to her, so do to Hagar what is good to her. Okay? In your eyes. So, whatever you deem is good in your eyes, even though that could be, hey, kill the kid, do whatever, he's leaving it up to Sarai to decide. Okay? And when dealt harshly with her, Sarai, then she fled. So when Sarai basically goes, okay, let me go deal with this situation. Okay? And the word harshly is like, basically like, very, very tone, like, it's kind of like, come here right now. Like, kind of like what a parent would do when a kid's in trouble. So it's like, yeah, come here, let me deal with this situation. Okay, and so because of that, because of all of that that's happened, as I said, because of all that that's happening, Hagar flees. Okay, Hagar flees. Hagar runs away. Rightfully so. She's probably like, hey, my child's about to be killed, so I might lose my child, so let me just get out of here. So Hagar flees from the presence, okay, and found her the angel of Yahweh. Okay, so it just says angel of Yahweh. Okay, I know some people think angel of Yahweh is code for Jesus. Whatever it is, it's the angel of Yahweh. Okay, whether it's Jesus or an actual angel, but it does use the word angel of Yahweh. Melech Yahweh. Okay, so he found an angel of Yahweh finds a spring of water in the wilderness. By the spring, they find her on the way to Shur. So she was leaving the area, basically. And he said that would be the angel of Yahweh, Wayamar, right? As we see there, which would probably sound like Vayamar, is probably how it's going to sound, Vayamar, okay? And the angel says to Hagar, servant of Sarai, from there have you come. Okay, from there have you come, and where are you going? So this is not like if this is an angel. So I want to emphasize this: if this is an angel, the angel is probably not all knowing, therefore is inquiring, "Hey, where are you going?" But if this is Jesus as the angel of Yahweh, although Jesus is not an angel, but you get the context that I'm talking about. Okay, so if this is actually when it says angel of Yahweh, if this is actually Jesus, basically, then we know Jesus is all knowing. And if it is Jesus, or if it is actually Yahweh himself, God himself, basically, if that is the case, if this is God, Yahweh himself, he's all knowing. So if that is the case, this would not be, I don't know where you're going. This would be, please open up to me. I'm here for you. Okay. And return to your mistress. So basically, the angel of the Lord is, whoever that may be, is saying to Hagar, because Hagar's scared for her own life and for the life of the baby. The angel of the Lord says, go back to your mistress. That would be Sarai. And submit yourself. Ve vahit ani. Vahit ani. Okay, if I'm saying that right. Submit yourself. Submission. Out of respect, out of reverence. Not a submission of, hey, you control me, you dictate all that I do, and all that. So no. Okay, so this is submit yourself out of respect, out of reverence, out of honor, under her hand, right? So go back to her, be submissive to her, and we will see what happens. And so he said to her, the angel of Yahweh, exceedingly, I will multiply your descendants. Okay, so now Yahweh, it sounds like that Yahweh is making a promise to Hagar as well. Okay. The angel of the Lord says to her, that would be Hagar, I will also increase your descendants, so that not they shall be counted for multitude. Okay. In today's world, the descendants of Ishmael would most likely be Muslims. The Muslim people, basically. Muslim area people. Arabs. Okay. And said to her, Yahweh, behold, you have conceived and have you shall bear a child, a son, Okay, so the angel of the Lord is talking, okay, to the woman. Angel of the Lord talking to the woman, and the angel of the Lord gives a name, or picks out a name. Doesn't even allow the woman to pick out a name herself. And goes, "No, I'm going to pick the name for you." And he names him Ishmael, for Yahweh has listened to your affliction. So that is probably for the most part what it means. The name Ishmael. I will look it up here in a moment as to what Ishmael means. But it basically, as far as we can tell from the context of the word, as far as we know, let me pause the video. So the word Ishmael, as we see, means Ishmael is a boy's name of Hebrew origin, meaning God will hear. So God will hear me. Okay? And as we see, Ishmael is the name of Abram's firstborn son and is also considered the traditional ancestor of the Arab people. Okay? So all Arabs today are descendants of Ishmael. The Italim, sorry, the Ital, the trying the I can't think of that word. Illegitimate, so basically a child conceived through a different method. Illegitimate. But anyway, that is what that means. So in any case, in the story we have Ishmael, and what is it? So Yahweh has listened. So as we see, it's the same thing. Yahweh has chosen to listen to me. Okay? Yahweh has chosen to listen to me. Okay? And he shall be a wild man. So talk about Ishmael. Ishmael shall be a wild man. A wild man. Now, what form of wild this is, I don't necessarily know, but it just says he will be a wild man. So probably like very hairy, very burly. Okay. And we will go and look up what this parai means. So man, Adam, as you see, that's a word. And if I could ever get this thing to work right. Okay, so we have parai, meaning. Okay. So parai is actually supposed to be Greek. Or sorry, Hebrew. So yeah, it's supposed to be Hebrew, which is not making a lot of sense. I must have done something wrong. So let's look at the Hebrew for the word. So parai, so a wild donkey that roams the Middle East. Lucid. So kind of like a wild man, basically. Probably one that lives in the desert or something. And so God is still talking about this designation of who Ishmael is to be. Okay. And he's going to be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man. In other words, he's going to fight against every type of peoples. Now, when you think about what Islam does, that they fight all nations, this actually makes sense. You can actually see how the fact that Muslims fight every other nation under the sun and kill every other nation under the sun is actually fulfilling what God said about what Ishmael would be. So the fact that the Islam community and Islam people go and kill all other nations, it makes sense that this would be people. Okay? So you get the idea. Right here, we have Ishmael Yahweh telling what Ishmael should be. Ishmael should be a wild man, probably like a crazy man or a desert man, a nature man, someone that lives in nature. This is not referring to like someone who lives in, like, it's not mean wild in the sense, from what I can get, of a person who is just hairy, very hairy. No, not that. Anyway, but I want you to pay close attention, okay, to what it says here. What it says here about Ishmael's people or descendants in regards to Ishmael's people, in regards to how Ishmael deals with other people. So let's look at right here, right? A wild man, his hand shall be against every man, and the hand of every man against him. Makes sense, don't it? Because when you think about Islam, those people fight against every other people under the sun. And every other people under the sun, in some sort of way, fight against them. So you see? Okay? So it makes sense. And now you can go, interesting. God, even in the disobedience, even in the evils of Islam, God is still fulfilling his promises. That indeed, Islam and the descendants of Islam, their hands will be against everybody. So it makes a lot of sense. As you see, it makes a lot of sense. Okay? So despite whatever you may think of that, whether that's biblical fulfillment happening or if it's just people's free will, right? Now, I want to emphasize, just because it's prophecy being fulfilled and it's God's word being fulfilled, that doesn't mean that free will has left. Okay? That's not what it means. It doesn't mean free will has left and all of a sudden there's no free will, and because it's biblical prophecy that there's no free will. No, that's not what it means. Okay? I don't believe that for a second that that's what it would mean. But in any case, he's describing what Ishmael and the descendants of Ishmael would be, right? They're going to fight against every other nation, every other peoples, and every other peoples are going to fight against them in some sort of way, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical. Okay, but this would kind of be like more against physical nature, because in the Old Testament that word "against" is physically based. Okay, and the presence of all his brothers, he shall dwell. Right, so he's just going to have lots of people around him. Okay. And she called the name of Yahweh who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. You are the God who sees me. In other words, just because I am not a Jew, you haven't ignored me. Okay? You have not ignored me. You have paid attention to me. You have not ignored me. Okay? God who sees me. El Roi. The God who sees me. El Roi. Okay? The God who sees me. Okay? The God who sees me. So you get the idea. Okay? Right here. El Roi. Roll. El Roll. El Roll. Okay? For, she said, also here I have seen the back of him who sees me. So she doesn't see the face of God. No. She sees the back. Okay, so this is a physical viewing. Hagar, for whatever reason, through the angel of the Lord, okay, is seeing the physical back. Okay, Hagar is seeing the physical back of her God, even though this is not necessarily her God from her people. This is still her God, as in the God of the household that you reside in. Okay, I have seen the back of him. Okay, so even in the Old Testament, you could see things of God. You never really saw God's face. No one has ever seen God's face in the Old Testament, seeing the face of God. But people have seen the arm of God, the leg of God, back of God. I believe I think it was Moses, even ended up seeing uh, the back of God as well when he was in between rock or something like that. And so she says, in response to Yahweh, you are the God who sees me, and I have seen my God's back. Okay? I have seen my God's back. Upon this was called the well from Roy La Lahai. Okay? So basically, where she was when this occurred, wherever she was when this occurred, right? Whatever area she was at when this occurred, she said, this place where I'm at is going to be called the well from Roy Lahai. Okay? And if I'm reading this right, and this area, wherever this well is, we get a context of where it's at. It's in between Kadesh and Bered. Okay? It's in between those two areas. She bore Hagar, Abraham, a son. So basically, Hagar gave birth to a son. She continued with the birth, right? And Abraham named the son whom had born Hagar Ishmael. And Abraham was how old? So how old was Abraham? Okay, how old was Abram? So hear that again. How old was Abram when Ishmael was born? 80 years old. 86, actually. 86 years old. 80 was 80 years and 6 years. So 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to Ishmael. Okay? So if anyone ever asks you, how old was Abram, when Ishmael was born? Okay, now this is the first child. Okay, the first child of Abram. He was 86. Now, we also know how old Abram was when Isaac was born. He was 100. So this is, trying to do the math here, this is 24 years difference. So basically, when Isaac was born, Ishmael would have been 24, roughly. Okay, so anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this is the context. So now, for a quick message to you, okay? In your life, right, you might have situations occur where you're going, I don't understand how God is going to fulfill his taking care of me. I don't understand how God is going to make sure that he delivers what he has promised or what he desires for my life. I don't understand how it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. It doesn't make sense how it's going to happen. I don't really get it. And you might be tempted in your life to try to meet God's plan through your own method might try to go, okay, you know what? Well, perhaps my own idea of how this should happen is the way it happens. And we as people, we human beings, we have a crazy amount of ability in ourselves to try to discern what God's plan should be, but doing it in a wrong manner because we base it on what we think it should be. So this would be like, okay, well, God says that, He's going to take care of me. Maybe He's going to give me a house. And instead of going, okay, well, God wants you to work for your own house, get a job, work for your own house, save your money, and do it by hard work. Maybe in your mind you're going, oh well, maybe God is saying that I should trick some sort of rich guy so that I could get his house that way by marrying him and then having him and then waiting for him to die, and then that's how I get the house I want. You see how the difference is, right? God has a plan, and God's plan is never for us to try to tell God how his plan should be. God's plan is always, I'm God, I'm going to tell you how things are going to unfold. Not, you're going to try to tell me how it should be. Now, the point I'm making is that we, as humans, have a really bad habit of trying to dictate to God, God, here's how you're going to fulfill this. God, here's how you're going to do that in my life. God, here's how you're going to fulfill these words in my life. God, here's how you're going to make sure this happens. God, here's how you're going to make sure that happens. We have a horrible way of trying to fit God's plan into our little box of what we think how it should happen. God wants me to have a job. Okay, well, it must happen this way. It must be this job. It must be this thing. And it has happened in this way. And that goes with everything else. Okay? We think that of so many crazy things. In any case, guys, thank you for waiting around for Genesis chapter 16. I will be back later today for Genesis chapter 17, which would be the video for today, Monday the 29th. Okay? So, take care and be blessed. And I hope that this is helpful to you. Again, I know that I haven't sat here and gone over every single word. Most of these words are self-explanatory, which is why I don't go and look at what they mean in the original Hebrew. But as you see right here, you can see the name of God, Yahweh, right there. Okay? Anyway, guys, take care and be blessed.